everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Job Search Strategies, the Employer Perspective. If you are not familiar with World Education Services, it is an organization that provides credential evaluation for individuals who have international education. Global Talent Bridge is an initiative of World Education Services that is dedicated to helping skilled immigrants fully utilize their talents and education in Canada and in the United States. We join with institutional partners and community-based organizations to help skilled immigrants leverage their training to achieve their career and professional goals. This webinar is one of many sessions we do to provide information and resources to internationally trained professionals such as yourself. I also invite you to follow us on Twitter at West Canada and to sign up with us at west.org/ca/subscribe to receive insider job search advice, invitations to webinars and networking events, and of course our monthly newsletters with tips to help you thrive in Canada and meet your career goals. My name is Jody Tingling and I am the Program Manager of West Global Talent Bridge and your host for this session. We also have Sarah Hua, who is coordinating this event today behind the scenes. This webinar is also presented in partnership with Marika Fraser from TTC and Sarah Birch from Scotiabank. For the agenda today, we will be discussing job search strategies, recruitment and screening process, the essential qualifications and skills, and strategies to become successful. We will also be discussing best practices in the workplace in terms of how to maintain your job and progressing to higher levels. And of course, we will have the question and answer period towards the end of the session. By the end of the session today, you should be able to develop job search strategies based on the advice from industry experts, demonstrate an understanding of key criteria employers look for in candidates, engage in activities that increase your employability in the Canadian job market, and of course, start taking actions to get your career to the next level. Now, for our panelists today, we have Marika Fraser. Marika is a diversity and outreach specialist at the Toronto Transit Commission, otherwise known as TTC, and she's held various positions there. In 2003, Marika began in HR as a placement specialist and recruiter and was focused on the hiring of transit operators. In 2015, Marika became the diversity and outreach specialist, where she led and managed talent acquisition, outreach initiatives, including developing and maintaining partnerships with community-based agencies and schools. Marika received an honors BA from University of Toronto, where she majored in economics and psychology, and her HR certification from Seneca College and an Ontario Management Diploma from Durham College. Welcome, Marika.
Thank you.
And we have Sarah Birch. Sarah obtained her Bachelor of Business Administration degree from Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, followed by a postgrad certificate in Human Resources from the University of Toronto, and recently obtained her Certified Human Resources Professional designation through the HR Professional Association. Sarah has worked with Scotiabank for 11 years in various business lines, from retail banking to commercial, and now in HR as a recruitment consultant for the Prairie region. Sarah has a passion for diversity and inclusion initiatives and has been heavily involved with Scotiabank's Pride Employee Resource Group since 2012, fostering an inclusive environment where employees and customers of the LGBT+ community and their allies feel safe, valued, and respected. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
And now we're going to engage in a panel discussion, of course, about job search strategies. So again, thank you both for joining us here today. This is really an important topic for our audience today who are either thinking about coming to Canada or are already in Canada. And you two bring an interesting perspective, of course, because you have been in the process of screening and interviewing candidates, and so you really have an inside knowledge of what it really takes to be successful. For the first question, can you tell me a little bit about your roles with your respective organizations, what you do there? We'll start with you, Sarah.
Sure. So currently I am a recruitment consultant with Scotiabank, and what that means is basically I do full cycle recruitment from sourcing candidates to interviewing and assessments to making a final job offer. And I do that for our retail branch network in the Prairie region, so Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. And actually currently I'm also on a split post temporarily working with both our diversity recruitment department as well as our culture and inclusion departments. And really the aim of both of those is to ensure a diverse and inclusive workforce and culture at Scotiabank.
Great. Okay, yourself?
I'm the diversity and health specialist at the TTC, so I do work in the human resources department, and I work in the employment services section. And my role is really to devise a recruitment strategy specifically around diversity and inclusion, as well as I am responsible for outreach initiatives that will engage people that are interested in working at the organization, but also meet our diversity and inclusion needs. We want to be representative of the customers we serve.
All right, so it sounds like both of your roles involve some sort of a diversity component to your roles, which is great. And in terms of the recruitment process at your company, can you take us through a little bit about how that sort of unfolds? We'll start with you, Marika.
Okay. Registering online is important. So going online to www.ttc.ca, register, take a look at what kind of positions we have posted. From that stage, the recruiters will look through and shortlist applicants that meet the criteria, meaning they do demonstrate the skills, knowledge, and experience that the job posting is looking for. From that point, successful applicants will be contacted for either testing or an in-person interview, which is typically a panel interview.
Okay.
And from there, beyond that, a conditional offer will be given to the successful applicant.
Okay. And Sarah, what is your recruitment process like?
Some similarities there. So if we have an active open position, we will we'll source candidates, we'll post the job, we might go to career fairs to attract people or reach out to community partners. Most definitely it will be posted on our site as well. And then people can apply that way. We will sort of narrow down, get to the most qualified candidates. Recruiters will touch base with those people and have sort of a short pre-screen interview discussion.
Okay.
And provided that is successful, they will go through to a full behavioral interview. And that will be with a recruiter either over the phone or virtually. And then depending on the business line, the position that the person's applied for, they may then go to an in-person interview with the business line hiring manager. And provided all of that is successful, again, depending on the job, there may be an assessment that they have to go through. Like I said, it does depend on the job, but one example would be the customer representative position that requires a simulation. Basically, they're going through a typical branch experience and typical client interactions, and we're testing for cognitive, computer, and customer service skills. That's our process kind of in a nutshell. I guess the final stage would be background checks. So referencing, education verification, and criminal history check, and those can be done internationally. So we can follow up with previous employers in other countries and education. We can check that globally as well.
Okay, so it sounds like you both have sort of a similar process in terms of the recruitment and screening. And I know, Sarah, you mentioned a little bit about the behavioral-based interview. For our audience today who might not know too much about behavioral-based interview, can you sort of expand on that and what that entails?
Sure. So basically it's, tell me about a time when you did X. So tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult coworker and how did you get through it. Tell me what you did do, not what you would do in this situation.
That makes sense. And when you're screening applicants, what essentially do you look for in their resumes?
Primarily I'm looking for someone who has clearly read the job description and feels that their skills and qualifications are a good match. I want to see that the skills and qualifications are also a good match, previous experience or, transferable skills that you have that I can see from your resume. Just from, I guess, a visual standpoint as well, something that's 2 pages, easy to read, and really gets to the point and shows that you have kind of what we're looking for. It makes it easier on the recruiter, and recruiters can be very busy with quite a large number of resumes to go through. So if you can make it easier to grab that recruiter's attention, then that's going to help.
All right, and similar question, Marika, what do you look for?
Very much like what Sarah just described. The one thing I'll add, though, is definitely if you can, if time permits, because the closing date for the posting has not come and gone yet, include a cover letter. So if the transferable skills are not clear or evident in the resume, maybe highlight that for the recruiter. At the TTC, they're actually looked at. All resumes that are reviewed are looked at by a recruiter. They're looked at by a person. It's not a scanning machine or anything like that.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you do want to ensure that your knowledge, your experience, your education, any skills that you have do stand out in your resume. So yes, I agree with Sarah, 2 pages is supposed to be ideal, but if you do have to go a little bit beyond that to show previous experiences, don't be afraid to do that.
Okay. So it sounds like for both of you guys, when you're looking at resumes, that it really needs to reflect the job posting that is advertised. So that really is a great point to drive home for our audience today. All right. During the interview process, what are some of the things that applicants can do to make a positive first impression?
Well, I'll begin, if you don't mind. Definitely fully understand the job posting. So Sarah talked about researching and getting some information beforehand that carries through to the interview process. Demonstrating that you understand what the requirements of the job are, that's very important. Research and understand what behavioral interviewing is. Because the bank and the Toronto Transit Commission, very large organizations, and most organizations in North America will use that method. So behavioral interviewing is important to understand. Using the STAR method during the interview process is important as well. The STAR method, basically, you're talking about the situation at hand. What happened, what task took place, or what was the task that you were doing, what actions did you apply to make those tasks come true, and what were the results. So during the behavioral interview process, apply that way of responding to the questions, and that will make it clear for the recruiter to understand what you're trying to share with.
And Sarah, any additions to that?
Very much what Marika said with the STAR method in your answering, and be as specific as you can. Talk about one specific situation, one specific customer, one specific time. Don't generalize your answers, because it's really difficult for a recruiter, the interviewer, to determine that you actually do have the skill if you're talking about, I did this all the time, or I do that every day in my current job. Try to be as specific as you can, and keep the focus on yourself, even if you're talking about, what you did in a team or a group. You don't try to focus on what you did, what you brought to the table. And the other thing, and I think, again, just echoing what Marika said, is and being prepared when you go into that interview, really looking at the job description and the key requirements, the key behaviors, and preparing maybe 5 or 6 examples or so ahead of time that you can speak to during the interview, and practicing those, whether it's alone, with a friend, a family member. And that's not to say write a script and memorize it word for word. It just really helps to say things out loud and have an idea of how you might structure your answer real time. But then again, even all the preparation in the world, sometimes you might be asked a question that you're not prepared for, and it's perfectly okay to ask for a moment, take a breath, or even to go back to that question.
So it sounds like you guys are saying really be prepared for when you have that interview with your company. All right. So for job seekers who have experience from other fields, for example, how can they start to talk about their transferable skills to get them to the next step? We'll start with you, Marika.
Okay. Be able to demonstrate those soft skills. So that's where the cover letter can be really important. Maybe the organization is asking for a specific set of skills. You can maybe list that skill set in a chart form, I guess, on your cover letter, and then talk about what you do have, so that the comparison is pretty clear-cut. The other thing, too, be able to communicate effectively the various situations that you've been involved in that may be similar to what the job posting is asking for. At the end of the day, the employer, at least the TTC anyway, if you don't have the directly related skills, they're going to look for your potential through those transferable skills.
Okay.
So you want to make it very clear and obvious as you can anyway, to the employer or to the recruiter. And it's always important to, if you've done your research, you'll know what kinds of things that the organization is working on. So what are some of the goals and objectives of the company? What are some of the initiatives that the company is working on? And again, you'll be able to relate maybe some skills that you've had in the past or currently to that job posting as well.
All right. Same question for you, Sarah.
Sure. So not much I can add to that, but just as Marika said, finding ways to explain how your skill set will apply and be beneficial for the employer in the role that you've applied for. I think sometimes that's difficult for us to do in our minds, and going from this business line, this segment, this particular position to something that's completely different. So how do I make that transition or explain how I can make that transition? But even the most basic of things can show that you have transferable skills. Example, I went from commercial banking to HR. So those are quite different business lines within Scotiabank. I had to demonstrate why should they hire me, why should they take a chance on bringing me over to HR. So, my relationship building skills that I developed throughout commercial banking, demonstrated how can that translate over to giving candidates an excellent experience as one small example.
So it sounds like you really should be providing examples of, how you can demonstrate your transferable skills from one position to another position. What are the specific skills and attributes that you would look for in an ideal applicant? We'll start with you, Sarah.
Okay. That's going to vary depending on position.
Right.
We have 90,000 employees worldwide and many, many different business lines: sales, IT, marketing, commercial, retail, banking. So it's going to vary depending on the position, and those will be listed in each of the job postings. But that being said, we do look for 10 core competencies across the bank or behaviors throughout most roles, albeit at varying levels. Some of those, as an example, are results focused, customer focused, strategic influencing, those kinds of things. In, say, a sales position, you're going to need more of those influencing and results focused, more so than maybe a customer representative position. That being said, of utmost importance to us is customer service. Our end goal is always the customer, and whether you're customer facing or not in your position, you're going to be dealing with various stakeholders, internal, external, and that all has an impact on the customer. So your communication skills, your ability to work with others in other departments, interpersonal skills, cross-cultural skills, those are all very important at Scotiabank, and I think in most organizations.
And how would applicants know what some of the core competencies are?
So those aren't necessarily evident on you can't go on and say online to our website and say what are the 10 Scotiabank core competencies, but you'll find them embedded within each job description. And
Rita, the same question for you. What are some of the specific skills in applicants that you look for in ideal applicants?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Sarah discussed just now, and I will add customer service. Obviously, we're transporting the public, so that's definitely something that is across the board for any job, whether it be a management position, the transit operator position, which for us is basically the driver position, and safety awareness is across the board as well. So every position will include that in the job posting. On top of that, awareness or an understanding of the Ontario Human Rights Code, again, because we transport the public. So at least have a general basic understanding as to what that means in terms of accommodating people with disabilities. No matter what job you apply for at the TTC, whether it be an engineer or a driver, you're going to be asked to demonstrate a level of awareness there as well.
Okay. So it sounds like with the key competencies, it's sort of dependent on the role as well as there are some general ones in there as well.
Yes.
All right. And what overall advice can you give to individuals to be successful in their job search? Start with you, Sarah.
So if you haven't, if you're not in Canada but planning to move to Canada, but you've already started your job search and applying, first I would say indicate on your resume or cover letter that you are intending to move to Canada and the time frame, if you know what that is. Like I said before, recruiters can be very busy and a lot of applicants to look at. So if there's a disconnect, you live in Australia and you've applied for a job in Toronto, we have to wonder, have you looked at the job description and actually read and know where it is and you plan to move here? And not all recruiters will take that extra time to pick up the phone or to send you an email to see what the disconnect is. So just make sure you're doing that. I would also say learn a little bit about the culture, knowing that some differences. I know in some cultures it's perfectly acceptable to show up to meetings late, to interviews late. I would not do that here in Canada. You will not leave a good impression. And look ahead of time into maybe groups and volunteer associations that you can be a part of and sort of establish or pre-establish before you arrive networks and communities and people that you can talk to about the various opportunities when you're here. And another great first step is tapping into community partners. Community partners know a lot about the Canadian job market, and they have connections with employers, and they have a lot of great networking events, and they have former alumni and people that have gone through the program and mentorship programs. So there's lots of great things through community partners that you can tap into as well.
All right, and Marika, anything to add on to that?
No, that was pretty complete. In terms of the community partners, if they exist abroad in your homeland, obviously reach out to them before you come to Canada. But once you get to Canada, there are definitely a number of employment agencies throughout various provinces and cities that can help you as well. So reach out to them. A lot of the services are free, if not many of them are free. And they will help you with things like understanding the interview process, understanding what we're talking about when we talk about behavioral style interviewing, STAR method, how to adapt to the culture of the interviewing process. You'll get all of that advice for free through many of these agencies. So use those resources to your advantage.
Yeah, that's certainly great advice in terms of reaching out to organizations that really do provide these services, again, for free, to help you with all of these job search strategies, for sure. Is a credential evaluation mandatory when applying for a role?
At the TTC, no. However, once you've applied for the position and if you've been selected and given a conditional offer, one of the conditions may be that you demonstrate that your education or your credentials are equivalent to what we're looking for. And at that point, you would be asked to pursue whatever you need to pursue to have that equivalency shown. But my recommendation to the audience listening today is get your credentials validated for Canada. Why not have that in hand beforehand rather than having to rush and take care of it once you get here? So if you are able to do that beforehand, I would highly recommend it. And an agency like West, they do those kinds of things. So why not take that service and use it?
Same question for you, Sarah. Is a credential evaluation mandatory?
So it does depend on the position. Again, I know I say that a lot, but it really does. But we do value international experience and certificates and accreditation. So like Marika said, if you can do that ahead of time, then you really should look into doing that. And apart from that, it does vary from role to role, so I can't go into too much detail on that.
But it sounds like, having your credentials evaluated is a great asset and a tool for the job search process, especially if you can get that ahead of time.
For sure.
Yeah. And once an applicant gets hired, what best practices or strategies can be used to ensure they do well within their roles?
Okay, I'll start. Be punctual to work. Again, it may be a cultural thing here in Canada, but it is important with pretty much all jobs. At the TTC, because many of the jobs work to schedule or there are deadlines, absolutely. Ask questions while on the job. Listen to the answers, learn from them. Have a positive attitude, come to work feeling good, and if possible, get involved with different activities while on the job or in the organization. So any opportunities you get to help out with various work organizations, various projects that may be outside of the realm of your work. If you can do it and still maintain a work-life balance, do that, because first of all, you'll be more satisfied. And if you're looking to develop yourself in your career, you'll have the tools to do that. And you'll be able to network if you do participate in various activities.
All right, great. And Sarah, same question for you.
Sure.
What best practices or strategies can applicants do to ensure they do well within their role?
Sure. So I will say, obviously, you should know what the position requirements are and be adhering to those. Regular check-in with your supervisor or your manager and just get a feel for how they feel that you are performing on the job and being open to feedback and, constructive criticism. And if there's any areas where you feel that you can develop or learn more or something else that you're interested in, then by all means ask for that. Regular touch bases and being open to work collaboratively with others. We don't work in silos anymore. There's a lot of cross-cultural, cross-department, cross-function communication that's required. Right. So realize that not everyone is going to have the same working style, the same communication style as you, and realize that you're going to have to adjust your own style from time to time and be open to doing that. And as Marika said, a really great thing to do if you can, if your position allows, is to put your hand up to participate in additional projects that are going to get you noticed and help you get to that next level.
So speaking of the next level, so similar question. So what strategies can people engage in to, progress within their career? So say they start off with an organization in a certain role, but they see other roles that are available. What can they do to really get to that next level? Sarah?
I'm going to echo a lot of what has been said already, but as I just said, put your hand up for those additional projects, roles, anything that you can do sort of outside of your job description, if that's possible. If you're interested in another area, maybe ask to job shadow, help out with a project in that area. We're in a global, continually changing environment, so being able to offer up viable solutions and being open to change is very important as well. And again, as Marika said, get involved in anything that you can and that is of interest to you in the workplace, and that could be maybe it's a social committee or an employee resource group. Get involved in those things. They really do get you noticed, and as she said, you establish a network of people that way. You'd be surprised at how quickly that can grow and help you move on to a role, even though they're kind of volunteer-like positions. It gets your name out there, and don't just join in the hopes of moving on to your next role. Really be an active participant and bring something to the table, and that will just help you even more.
Great. Any additions to that, Marika?
Not much more that I can add to that other than understand your current job.
Right.
So when you get into an organization and you began, understand what your role is fully and understand how it fits into the goals and objectives of the organization, because you may be able to have that position branch out. So I started in HR as a recruiter, but I realized that we were trying to improve or expand on our diversity and inclusion initiatives.
Right.
So my position basically rolled into what I'm doing now, specifically because I understood where the organization was going. I spoke to the right people. They understood that there were positions that needed to be created in order to accommodate the changes we were going through as a company. So my job evolved out of that.
Okay.
So it definitely works.
That's great advice. And do you guys have any examples of maybe employees who started in an entry-level role and progressed within the organization?
I'll start. Myself. I think I'm a perfect example. I came on board as a summer student, and I was a Wheel-Trans reservationist. And Wheel-Trans is a transportation service that we provide that takes people door to door if they have a disability. And my role was basically on the phone. It was like a call center type setup. And I did that while I was in university. I graduated university, and then again, through networking and asking questions, I realized there was a human resources department. But to get there, I had to get the skills. I got an administrative support role in the engineering department, so you'll see the span of the organization, just by applying internally, and my university degree was able to help me to get that position. But again, I was driving to get into the HR department, so I went back to school, got the certification that I needed, offered to volunteer in the organization, and really all I was doing was filing. But while filing in the HR department, after my Wheel-Trans shifts and my engineering administrative supportive shifts, I'd ask questions. I ended up volunteering outside of the organization as well in a nonprofit company, and that really opened my eyes to the different areas of the career that I have now. And I realized what my focus would be, and I chose recruitment. But again, that was doing it on my own time. The education was on my own time. Mind you, the TTC does provide a lot of support if you decide to upgrade your skills. And I moved to other departments as well. And in terms of how I moved to those various jobs, it's reading job postings, reading beyond the title, because one of my jobs was as a database technician. Again, still striving for HR, but there were other jobs in between. My transferable skills got me the position, had nothing to do with IT, but when you read the job posting, it was really administrative supportive work. But it gave me an opportunity to, again, expand my horizons. I ended up in the safety department, so exposure to yet another area of the company that I wasn't fully aware of. Asking questions, networking, that's how I found out about the posting in the first place. Got clarification on the job posting because I read it and I understood it, and I did my research.
Wow. So it sounds like you took some significant steps to really help you progress throughout the company.
Yeah.
And Sarah, same question for you, of course.
Sure.
Any examples of somebody who started in an entry-level role and progressed throughout the company?
I do. I have many, actually, but like Marika, I'll speak about myself. I know my story best. So I started in my undergrad in a co-op position with Scotiabank, and my first position was as a customer representative, so a teller, and then they took me back for my second and third work terms in commercial banking. So I stayed with the company throughout the remainder of my undergrad, just in some part-time positions, mostly as a teller, some other administrative roles as well. And then once I graduated, I stayed in commercial banking, looked around, did some electronic banking and business account services. Like Marika, moved around, got a feel for some different areas of the bank, and then decided that really what my passion was working with people. Really wanted to move to HR, so I started to go back to school on a part-time basis while working for full-time. And while I did that, the bank was really great. The managers that I had, supervisors that I had, they were really great in connecting me with people who were in HR to have conversations about potential career paths, that kind of thing, directing me to certain courses, and a lot of networking and things that I could do to get noticed within HR. So they were very supportive in that way. And then again, in my current split post with diversity, I realized, I'll backtrack, before I started in this current split post, I realized again that this was the area I really wanted to be working in, with diversity and inclusion. So I put my hand up, like I said earlier, I put my hand up for everything that I could. Again, a lot of things were on my own time as well, and also through networking and volunteering and an employee resource group, as well as a social committee, occupational health and safety, anything that I could get my hands on, really, that would help me grow both knowledge-wise, network-wise, and that I could really actively contribute to. I did that, and that was all, on my own time as well. So the company really provided a lot of opportunities for me to do what I love, but really the onus has always been on me to do that extra work, talk to the people I needed to talk to. So your employer should really help you achieve your dreams, but you have to be willing to put in the work as well.
Yeah, I think both of your stories are a great example of, how you can start in one role. So, Marika, you said for you that was like a summer position.
That's right.
And Sarah, it was a co-op opportunity, and work your way up really through, networking and doing the necessary necessary work that it takes to really get to that next level, whether it's talking to the right people or taking courses or exploring your options. I think that's definitely great examples that you've used to help our audience here today. So I think that's all the time we have for our panel discussion, and now we're going to get to the question and answer period where we get to hear some questions from our lovely audience. Let's start with the first question. So this one states, is it true that resumes are screened by a computer to find keywords so no humans are involved? Is that true?
At the TTC, that is false.
Okay.
Recruiters they go through about 90,000 resumes every year, and they look at them one by one at the TTC still.
Wow.
We just find we get a better quality candidate that way.
Okay.
Mind you, that doesn't mean we won't eventually move into the computerized screening, but at the end of the day, it is people at the TTC.
Actual human beings
They're
that
human
look at
beings.
your resume.
Yes, they are.
Is that the same case for Scotiabank?
It is, but we will use the help of a computer system. So it is absolutely, a person is looking at the resume once we've narrowed it down, and we might use the computer, we will use the computer to help us narrow it down. So, you know, if we have 1,000 applicants for one position, but we know there are certain skills that we absolutely need, maybe it's a language skill, maybe we need Mandarin, then we will put Mandarin into our search field, and that will narrow it down for us. And then if we, from there, end up with a list of 20 resumes, an actual person is looking at each of those resumes.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a part of the pre-screening process that a computer might, you know, pick out some of those keywords for Scotiabank, whereas with TTC, it's all humans.
It's all humans. I mean, there is pre-screening questions that you are going to be asked on the computer. So that will help narrow things down a little bit, but at the end, before it gets to the hiring manager, somebody's going to look at it.
Another question. So oftentimes we talk about the do's in job search. Are there any don'ts in job search that our audience should be aware of?
Sarah said it. I believe I mentioned it as well. Never be late. Always be on time. And don't expect to get a new job overnight. Job hunting takes time. And even when you get a job or you get a foot in the door, so to speak, and you actually begin a job, you may not get the dream job that you've always wanted right off the bat.
Right.
So it may not be the job you wanted to start out with, but as Sarah and I both did, and many other employees at our companies, both of our companies have done, you could easily move through the organization if you're willing to put in the time, the effort. Maybe you have to go back to school despite having been educated really well. In the country that you're in currently, or even if you were educated here in Canada, and maybe you'll have to put in some time where you might not get paid. So I know we all work to get paid, but you may have to do a little bit extra to get to where you want to go. So don't be afraid of that. And don't be afraid to let friends and family know that you're job hunt, because they may be a good key source of network to help you get to the places you want to go in terms of companies, and they can get the word out for you as well. And I'll throw in, don't rely on one job hunting method. Think about various means of getting the word out there, getting your resume or application out there. There's the internet, there are career fairs. We talked about employment agencies as well. Connect with all of those sources.
Right. Anything else to add on to that in terms of some of the don'ts of job search?
Sure, just a couple of things. Don't be afraid to apply for a position if you don't check every single box on that job description. Don't be way off the mark. As an example, if they're looking for 10 years of management experience and you have 0, then that's probably not a good fit. But if you have maybe 4 or 5, 3, there's a possibility. If that's the only thing that you're not 100% sure on, it can be worth a shot. Don't, at the same time, apply for every single job that is currently posted in an organization. It really can show lack of focus. Maybe you don't know exactly what you want to do. You just want to, you want to work for that organization. That's okay, but try to have some focus. Don't apply for everything ranging from, CEO to teller. I've seen it happen. So try to have a little bit of focus is always a good idea. And like Marika said, you're not going to get a job overnight. So don't be discouraged if maybe you're not contacted for a job that you apply for. Keep applying, be open to feedback, get others to look at your applications. Maybe there's something that you're missing. And then if you do get to the interview stage and you're not given a job offer, don't miss that opportunity for feedback. So ask the interviewer, what could I have done better or differently, or, was there something I was lacking, or even, what did I do well? Just ask for feedback. If you get a call and they say, we're sorry, we're proceeding with another candidate, don't just hang up the phone. I know it's a conversation you want to get away from, really, but take that extra minute and ask for feedback.
All right. And so this next question, you guys have already touched on this a little bit. What is the best way to grab a recruiter's attention? Can you be a little bit more specific in terms of what applicants can do?
To grab a recruiter's attention, truly make sure that you do have the required skills, the required knowledge, at a very basic level, the required education. And any company that is posting a job ad or a job advertisement is going to make that very clear. So you will grab our attention if you're checking off most of, if not all of those boxes. But as Sarah said, just to echo what she mentioned just a few moments ago, don't be afraid to apply if you are not checking off all the boxes, but be realistic. You will be setting yourself up for frustration and disappointment if you're not checking off any and you choose to apply anyway. So if you strongly demonstrate that information that we're asking you to have, those skills and those basic requirements, maybe mirror it again in your cover letter. Don't be afraid to give us a comparison of what we're asking as an organization and what you actually have. It doesn't hurt to do that in your cover letter document.
All right. And any additions to that?
I would agree with all of that, and I would also maybe add, keep it applicable. I've seen resumes where someone's applying for a financial advisor position and they have as their first listed skill able to vaccinate animals or something. And maybe there is a connection there, but it's not immediately evident to me. So keep it applicable. List the most applicable skills that you have first, so it makes sense.
Yes, absolutely, I agree.
So really it's about understanding what that job posting is asking for and applying your skills and experiences towards that.
Right, and if you feel there is some kind of connection, maybe state that so it's obvious. We realize that you have a wide variety of skills and certifications that you've probably worked hard to achieve, no doubt. It needs to be applicable to the current position you're applying for.
Applicable and relevant.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. All right, so this next question states, platforms automatically send you a listing that match your profile. So if you have applied but haven't heard back, should you continue applying to similar postings? What would you advise on that?
I would honestly take the advice of one of those service or community agencies. Bring your resume in, have them take a look at what you're submitting, and you may need to make some adjustments to what you're putting in your application and your resume. And take the advice to constructive criticism and honestly make those changes. Ask questions. Some organizations will allow you to call for some feedback with regards to your resume. I'll be honest though, the TTC, because we get so many, that's going to be a challenge. And the person answering the phone is not the hiring manager, and I believe the same is probably true with Sarah's organization at the Scotiabank. Smaller companies may be able to do that for you. Big companies, banks included, I doubt that that's the case, but wherever you can get that feedback, apply it to an updated or revised resume. And at the TTC on our applicant tracking system, you can update your resume and upload it, so that change is showing. And then yes, you'll be applying to the same job, but you've made some tweaks and some changes. But again, keep it relevant. So if your relevant and very accurate resume is not getting you that position, maybe you have to rethink your focus and your job search strategy and maybe think about another career option or maybe a different direction in terms of your job search.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because if you continually applying for a job and not hearing any results, then I think accessing a community service agency would be helpful to help you look at your resume and help it get better. All right, this is a question specifically about a cover letter. So I know, Marika, you're talking a bit about cover letters. So is it beneficial to have a bullet-style cover letter to make it easier for the recruiter?
If you're doing a comparison of what the job requirements are and what you actually have in terms of skill set, that's fine, but do start it off in a paragraph format. So greet whoever your reader is going to be, whether it be the hiring manager or if it's going to be a very generic, general greeting. Do that in paragraph format, but when you come to talking about the skills and your experiences, it's acceptable. And then your closing part of the letter, put that back in paragraph format again. But your comparison could be bullet points, or it could be even a chart embedded into the letter. That's fine.
Okay. All right. As a new immigrant, how do you answer the question of not having Canadian experience on your resume? I'll post that out to you, Sarah.
For me, it doesn't matter. I look at the experience. I don't care where the experience is coming from.
Okay.
I can only really speak to that for my organization. I don't know how others necessarily view that, but for me it doesn't have to be, as long as your skills are transferable and you have what I'm looking for. If anything, international experience can only be a bonus. You're bringing different insights that maybe we don't have, and so for me it's just a bonus, and I don't ask for Canadian experience.
Okay.
TTC would echo that, absolutely. I don't even have anything to add.
So really it's about emphasizing your transferable skills again, and how that would apply to that role. All right. The next question, how soon after applying will I know that I was selected for an interview? So is there a standard?
Going back again to, it depends on the position. It depends on how quickly we need to fill it. It depends on, is it a role that we are frequently hiring for? Like if it's a customer representative role, there might be a posting that's up for months. It's not necessarily for one particular posting in one branch.
Okay.
Across the city or something. So, you might apply, and we prefer to get back to people as quickly as we can, but it might be a month, it might be 2 months, and that's just because we have such a large volume of resumes to get through that it could be a little while. So it depends, and then if it's something that we have to fill right away, you should hear back either way, whether we are proceeding with you or not, within a couple of weeks. It really does depend on the position.
And I assume that's the same answer for you, Marika?
Yes, it is. If you're successful for a position and you're going to get a fairly quick reply, you're looking at, on average, about a month and a half at the most.
Okay.
However, many of our postings are honestly for future requirements. So it will take a few months, up to even 6 months, even beyond that, depending on the job.
Next question states, what education level of applicants do you generally prefer? I assume this really kind of depends on the position as well, too.
Yes, it does.
It does, but for us, I can say at a minimum, high school or high school equivalent.
Okay.
For a TTC, it does depend, and the job posting will be very clear as to what the requirements are.
All right, so check that job posting.
Absolutely.
And can you guys explain what a conditional offer means?
Yeah, I used it a couple of times, so I'll gladly explain. So a conditional offer means that you're signing that, yes, you want to accept the job, but the employer, being the TTC, is going to ask you to make sure the reference checks are satisfactory. Okay. A police check, if it's required for that job, is satisfactory. If there's a medical or drug testing, remember our organization is transportation, as long as the TTC will pay for all the checks that are required for the most part, as long as the requirements are met there, and the education checks out as well. So if you were asked to have the credential evaluation done and we want to wait for those results, we'll keep you on hold. Once all the results come in, once all of the conditions of employment are met and they're satisfactory, then yes, you do move on and you begin the job, or you begin training, whatever the case may be.
So I think we have a couple more questions. This question states, are career gaps viewed negatively to employers? Sarah, do you want to give that a try?
Sure. Not necessarily. I think I hear plenty of good reasons for gaps on resumes. So I do generally ask, you know, if your last position started in 2009 and then previous to that you ended the position in 2005, so there's like a 4-year gap there.
Mm-hmm.
I do ask, you know, what were you doing in that time frame? If it's not clearly evident on your resume, maybe you were in school, you know, many were taking care of an ill parent or child or home raising children, and all of that is, you know, completely fine and acceptable and reasonable, and I have no issue with that as long as you can explain to me why.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. Can you speak to jobs that are within your company that highlight a person's transferable skills?
There are many. I mean, I can give a couple of really quick examples. The transit operator position, again, that's the driver position. If somebody gets hired onto that position, they're going to be driving either a bus, a streetcar, or a subway vehicle. And we get people that apply for that position from all different job backgrounds and all walks of life. So I've personally hired people that have been doctors in other countries, that have been lawyers in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't want to take the work home anymore, or they don't want the stress of the job.
Right.
They've always loved transportation, and they've wanted to make a career change. As long as they demonstrate the customer service skills, which is very obvious in those two jobs, absolutely. Coping skills, are you able to demonstrate that you have a level of safety awareness? So again, we'll get people that may have been working in the school system. Maybe they were a teacher at one point, or maybe they were a cab driver, and now they want to drive a larger vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good example of transferable skills. As long as you can demonstrate those core skills, you're probably a good candidate. And pretty much all of our managerial positions, do you have the analytical skills that are needed? Do you have a level of leadership that you can demonstrate to the recruiter or the organization? Are you innovative? Are you flexible? If you can demonstrate those in past jobs, that would be putting you in a good place to be considered for the position.
Right. And any examples at Scotiabank, Sarah?
Sure. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, with myself and transferring from commercial banking to HR, those relationship building skills, communication, working with others cross-culturally, those types of things transfer, I think, well, very well into any other position. But we like to build our employees as well. So, I mean, you start in a customer representative position, we want to be able to transfer you into sales, financial advisor, or even management within a branch. So we try to help you build those skills from within as well. I mean, you're coming to the job with a skill set of your own, but we're helping you build on those, and we like to have well-rounded employees. So, I mean, if you're wanting to make the jump from one business line to the other, then we certainly help you to get there. But like Marika said, you can really prove that a lot of things are transferable, the skills, the behaviors, the competencies, and it's just making sure that you outline that and you detail that and you show and you demonstrate.
And that's great for our audience to hear today, is that, you know, with both of your respective companies, there are positions where you can demonstrate your transferable skills.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's all the time we have left today for the question and answer period. And again, of course, visit our website at west.org/ca/GTB for more information. And we have many of our previous webinars on there that you can check out, including Finding Career Success as a New Canadian, Exploring Your Career in Canada, Professional Networking for Skilled Immigrants, and so on. So make sure you do check out our website. Once again, I'd like to thank our presenters, Marika and Sarah, for attending this webinar today and sharing your unique perspective of the job search process. And we'll just say goodbye to our audience for now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.